Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be taking some toys and turning them into terrain. So I got all these toys at my fiance's thrift store, and look at all this stuff. Like, I know it's Fisher Price and it's kind of goofy looking, but there is so much here that I could do so much with. So I'm starting another terrain series where basically I'm going to take all of these toys and turn them into awesome 40k terrain. We get so much sweet stuff, like just these barrels and stuff alone. Like the tubes, a little cement bag, that's awesome. And sorry, these crates. And this thing with this robotic arm that actually like moves. Awesome. Like, honestly, just a paint job and that's 40k terrain. Like straight up. Like, just look at these things. You know what I could do with this? Like, well, you guys are gonna find out what I can do with this, because this is awesome. Like, this is straight up like some Mech Town stuff. This guy here, you can be pouring into that one. Like, I don't know, I can do crazy stuff with this for sure. And then these tracks here, the only reason I took them is just because this rock face is already done up on them. And yeah, just a simple paint job and like some flocks and static grasses and things like that. These will look awesome. So I can't wait to do them up for you guys. And I guess let's get started on it. Alright, so we start by just looking the piece over, seeing any areas that don't really look like terrain yet, that look too much like a toy, especially those flat areas I was just pointing to. And so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some PVA glue, and I'm going to go over all those areas and just add sand. Any areas that don't have any texture, that look really weird, like I was showing you the tops of those tunnels there, they needed a little bit of texture. And then just areas that have like holes or knobs or flat areas, I've just sprinkled a little sand here and there just to give it a little more of a natural look. And then just like every terrain piece, I'm going to give it a nice primer coat of some espresso brown rust paint. And more or less, this just, I love rust paint because it holds on to everything and you can paint over pretty much any material. And in this case, it's very shiny plastic, so I want something that's going to stick and add a nice protective layer. And once I've done 2 coats of that, I'm going to paint all of the metal areas with a Silver Morning, just a basic dollar store paint that I got. Not expensive, and because I'm using it in mass quantities, I want something cheap. So then I'm just going to go around all of the rocks and dry brush them, give them a real thick dry brush of some like wolf gray, like a Dawnstone color. And then once that's done, I want to wash the same washes I've used in all the other terrain pieces. So on all the metal areas, I'm going to use a cinnamon brown mixed with water, the same way I have in all the other trash to treasure pieces. And then here I've got an emerald green mixed with water, and I'm just going around the bottoms of the rocks, the same way I went over the bottoms of the temple bunkers in that video, just to make sort of like a mildew sort of layer close to the ground. And then just going around and touching up all of the dirt areas with that espresso brown. So, of course, on the bridge, I just hit it again with a dry brush of silver to bring out the metals, and then I got to touch up the espresso brown, as I had to with all the other pieces, because I put little bits of dirt on there. And then, as usual, I'm going to hit it with my yellow oxide, just a quick dry brush over all the espresso brown. And then I'm actually going to take some cinnamon brown and just paint all of the wood planks that go around the train track, same as I would any other wood detail. And then finish off the entire terrain piece with my unbleached titanium, which is basically a bone color. And what this does is it just adds a nice highlight to everything, and because it works on top of every color, it just ties the entire terrain piece together. And now that that's done, I can actually paint the train track. So I'm going to very carefully go around with my Silver Morning and paint just the rails of the track with the silver. And then I've decided, since it's grown over, it needs some rust. So I've just got here a piece of sponge from like your carrying cases. You can just use a very small piece and just get some Doom Bowl brown on your palette and just hit it with the sponge. And then when the Doom Bowl's dry, you hit it with a little bit of blazing orange and it looks just like rust, like magic. So if you look at this piece here and all the little details that are already molded into the plastic, there's like grass and plants and things on both of these pieces, and they just look corny. Obviously they don't look like terrain. So all the areas that they've already decided look like blades of grass, I've decided to just put some grass. why think about it, right? If they've already decided that's where the grass is supposed to be, then that's where I'm putting grass. And then there are also areas that kind of look like large leaves or plants, and for that I'm just going to cover them with some clump foliage, just some basic bushes from Woodland Scenics, nothing special. And then after putting the piece together, I just looked at it and thought, you know what, this needs a little bit more grass, because there are certain areas that are kind of naked, and I'm just going to add a little bit more static grass, just to sort of tie the bridge into the sides. And then now, I want to go around with all my clump foliage once the initial PVA is dry, and soak them in PVA mixed with water. So while I wait for that to dry, I've just decided to take these toy signs and bring them up to speed to incorporate them into this terrain piece. So of course, I'm going to prime them with the espresso brown, as I do everything else. 2 coats, as always. And then the actual sign part, I'm going to paint with the same silver morning I did the bridge. And we're basically going to paint these the same as the bridge, just to tie them into the bigger terrain part, the terrain piece, I should say. And once I've got my 2 coats of silver on there, I'm just going to go around and put some PVA glue on the base of them and add some sand, the same way I do on pretty much every terrain piece. And once that's done, once that's dry, I should say, I'm going to want to touch up the sand with my espresso brown. Again, just to tie it in with all of the colors in the other terrain pieces for this table. And I've just looked at the rust on my train set while that was drying, while the espresso was drying, and decided that there just wasn't enough orange. So I'm just going to go around and just add a little bit more orange with the sponge, just to bring all that rust up. I want it to be real bright. It doesn't quite look good enough. So now I'm going to go around all the sign areas, the places that I think would be like the actual paper billboard, the parchment or whatever you want to consider it, and paint it with that bone color, the same one I dry brushed the rest of the terrain piece with. And of course 2 coats, because otherwise it's going to look inconsistent. And then the final detail on the bridge, I'm just going to add these sort of bush type things that I got from Army Painter. They look like broccoli that you can just pull apart, and it makes great vines. So I'm just going to put PVA glue all over the bridge and just stick it around wherever I think it should be. Cover up any areas that I don't really like the paint job, and also add another detail. And then while that's drying, I actually decided that if this was all grown over, the train track would need more grass. It would actually be growing over with grass. Just make it up as you go along, guys. Have fun with it, you know what I mean? And just touching up the sign to match the other signs. You want to be real careful, especially because the rest of the bridge is already painted. And just like everything else, we need to do 2 coats. And then I'm just going to go around the signs and paint words on them. Paint random words. Danger, caution, train out, things like that. And it just adds that sort of extra detail to sort of catch the eye, I should say. And then once the words are dry, I'm just going to age the entire sign, the metal included, except for on the bridge. I'm just going to paint the caution part itself with Agrax Earthshade, and it'll just add a nice weathering effect, and it's a very simple way to make them look aged. And then here I'm just touching up the bases of the signs to bring them up to the rest of them. So I got my yellow oxide and then my unbleached titanium, just making sure they are up to the rest of the other terrain piece, or the rest of the terrain piece I should say. And same thing with the rust. I'm going to go around with my sponge, paint on my Doom Bull brown, and then once that's dry, I'm going to follow behind it with the blazing orange. Very simple technique. I am loving this. I'm doing it on all kinds of things these days. Then, of course, I want to add the vines the same way I did to the bridge, because I want these signs to sort of tie in with the center bridge part, and that way tying into the rest of the terrain piece. And just like we did on the bushes, you're going to want to do the same thing on the signs with some PVA glue and water. Mostly water, very little PVA. In fact, the thinner it is, the more likely it is to soak into these kinds of materials. They're very absorbent, and if you have it too thick, when it dries, you'll get like clear globs, because it does dry clear. But in this case, we want it to soak in real good, because we want it to actually harden the vines and have them still look like vines without like goo all over them. And that's all she wrote. There it is, fully complete. All the glue has dried, everything's hardened. I'm not entirely happy with the way the rust turned out, but I think it looks pretty awesome. I mean, from going from a kid's toy, it's pretty sweet. The little signs that were just, you know, an ad-lib to go on with them. I think it turned out pretty good. And I'll put Jim Bob here in for scale. Let's move him around a bit. Not bad, right? So to complete these, I'll probably just get Adam to spray a little bit with his airbrush or something. I'm going to go over to his place and do a bunch of glow effects for some of my other models, so I'll just get him to do that then, or I'll do it with his airbrush, I should say. And there it is. So that's the terrain piece entirely complete. Hope you enjoyed that video. That was a fun little project. I just really wanted to see if I could do it. Like I say, I got a whole lot more toys here that I'm going to be painting over at some point, but for right now I just wanted to see if I could actually make one look like it matched the rest of our table. Plus we needed some bigger line of sight blocking pieces for our Twitch stream table, so that is what it is. And now I've got a nice line of sight blocking piece, a very simple piece of terrain that didn't require any real building, just a whole lot of painting and dressing up, which was absolutely awesome. It's quick, cheap, super easy. So I suggest you guys check garage sales, check thrift stores, you know what I mean? Stuff like this shows up and you get it for pennies, like literal pennies. And you can make some awesome stuff out of it for your gaming tables, so that's pretty awesome. If you like this video, please hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help us here at Encounter Wargaming. And that being said, go to the description below, check out our Patreon. We have a Patreon campaign, and it's really the only way we get any kind of income off this channel. Not that we're asking for a handout, but you know, we got to keep the lights on too, right? So check that out. There's a lot of rewards there for you, and we'll see you at our next encounter.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back home. Okay.